Okay, good afternoon. Welcome to the first meeting of the newly constituted Police Service Board for the town of Tecumseh. And we are filming live from the council chambers for the town of Tecumseh. And this is our first in-person meeting since the beginning of the pandemic. So we're pleased to have members with us in council chambers, as well as representatives from the Ontario Provincial Police. I will just call the meeting to order and be the chair of the meeting. My name is Margaret Isaac Evans. I'm the secretary to the Police Services Board and also the CAO for the town of Tecumseh. And I will turn the chair over to the newly elected chair once we have arrived at that portion of the meeting. Initial steps, though, is to call the roll call. So we have all members of the Police Services Board present with us this afternoon, as well as 3 members of the OPP, Inspector Angela Ferguson, Staff Sergeant Jamie Smith, and Sergeant Mike Whitelaw. Members of the Police Services Board who are in attendance include Mayor Gary McNamara, Councillor Rick Toniel, Member Mark Gomes, Member Christopher Hales, and Member Paul Sweet. So the first order of business after roll call will be to do the oath of office. We have a new Police Services Board member, and that is Councillor Rick Toniel. So we will attend to his oath of office as first order of business. Thank you. Just give it a minute. Here we go. Okay. Okay, so I'll turn it over to Councillor Toniel to give his oath of office.
I, Ricardo Toniel, solemnly swear that I will loyally to His Majesty the King and to Canada, and I will uphold the Constitution of Canada, and that I will, to the best of my abilities, discharge my duties as a member of the Town of Tecumseh Police Service Board faithfully, impartially, and according to the Police Service Act and any regulations, rules, and bylaws. So help me God.
Thank you, Councillor Toniel, and he signed the oath of office. That will be witnessed by our recording secretary, Ellen Preichet. Congratulations, you're a member of the board.
Thank you. You don't mind? Thank you.
Okay, the next order of business, and I'll just stay here for the moment, is to provide a service recognition for Deputy Mayor Joe Bichetti, who has served on the Police Services Board for the town of Tecumseh from 2015 to 2022. He had previously served from 2009 to 2010 as well. And I would invite Deputy Mayor Bichetti to join me at the table. So one moment, I forgot my props. Thank you. Okay. So it's an honor to present Deputy Mayor Bichetti with this certificate outlining his years of service to the board, and to also present him with a token of the board's appreciation by way of a gift. Yes. So I'll turn it over to you, Deputy Mayor Bichetti, if you wish to say a few words to the board.
Thank you, Madam CEO, and to the Police Service Board, Chair Hales, Mayor McNamara, Member Mr. Sweet, new member Councillor Toniel, and Member Mark Gomes and OPP. As I was walking in, they asked how it feels to sit on this side. I said a lot of stress is off. When you do sit on these boards, there's a lot of responsibilities that encompasses your job as board members, and so going on in a different direction in this way. I wish you all the best in your dealings. I know the next year is going to be very busy with looking at the new legislation coming down and perhaps merging of local boards. So wish you all the best. Thank you for the years of service. Thank you, Inspector Ferguson, Jamie Smith, and Mr. Whitelaw, for your work and continued success in patrolling and keeping our community safe. So wish everyone all the best. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Bichetti. Okay, we will now proceed with item E of the agenda, which is the election and appointment of officers. And the first appointment is of the secretary and recording secretary to the board. So I'll read the motion and then look for a mover and a seconder, please. That the appointment of Margaret Mysick Evans as secretary and Ellen Prochette as recording secretary for the Tecumseh Police Services Board be reconfirmed for the period of January 16th, 2023 to the date of the first meeting of the board in 2024. And so moved by Mayor Gary McNamara and seconded by member Paul Sweet. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. We'll proceed then to the election of the chair. So I am going to call for nominations for the chair of the Tecumseh Police Services Board for the year 2023 and up to the first meeting of the board in 2024. Looking for nominations, please. Mayor McNamara.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to bring forward the name of Christopher Hales for the position of chair.
I'm looking for a second. Sorry, I'll repeat that. I'm now, so that is the nomination has been made for Christopher Hales, now calling for any other nominations for chair of the Police Services Board. A final call for nominations for chair. Seeing none, we have only one nomination. Mr. Hales, are you prepared to accept?
I am prepared to accept.
Excellent. So that you are duly acclaimed to the position of chair of the Tecumseh Police Services Board for the coming year of 2023. And with that, I will turn it over to you, sir, to take over from here.
Just get our paperwork in order here. So we have now nominations for election of the vice chair of the board. I'm looking for nominations from the floor. Mark Gomes.
I so nominate Paul Sweet for the position of vice chair.
Excellent. Seconded.
I'll second the nomination.
Are there any other nominations from the board? Seeing none, Paul, you stand.
Yes, thank you.
Excellent. So we have a vice chair. That's excellent. Before we move on, if I can, just a couple of notes taking over as chair of the board. First of all, the untimely death of PC Pruchala in up in Hagersville brings to mind, I think, the seriousness of what we do here. We are only part of the picture, obviously, as a police service board, but I certainly hope that we don't lose our focus, the understanding of just how serious policing is in this province. Second thing I would like to say is we received from our association its vision statement. And it clearly says here that our vision is to be the center of excellence of police governance in the province of Ontario. That's an important point to make. We sometimes get sidetracked with understanding of other services that are maybe available through the community's safety and well-being plan. But the job of this board to fulfill the Constitution is to govern policing. And that's what makes us a democracy. So that's something we should keep in our mind. And finally, on a personal note, I would like to thank Councillor Teneo at the special meeting held by council. Councillor Teneo reminded everybody that we are finishing, we think, a long trek to incorporate the new Police Service Act under the Community Safety and Policing Act. And with that will be our own demise in the creation of a detachment-based police board, one or two. So we all have to keep in mind that we are working towards that. That is one of our main focuses, and it may be our own demise, but I think we as a board would offer to our administration and the fact that we will support all the things that are going to have to be done in order to create a new board, sunset this board and move forward. So we got a lot of work to do. Thank you. Move on to item F, disclosure of pecuniary interest. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest with regard to the today's agenda from anybody on the board? Seeing none, we'll move on to item H, which is the approval of our, I'm sorry, item G, approval of our agenda. I'm looking for a mover for that. Moved by Paul Sweet, seconded by Rick Tennell. All in favor? Passed. We're looking at the approval of our previous minutes, which I've gone through, and I'm sure everybody else has. Is there any, if we are looking for someone to move the approval of those minutes? Mayor McNamara, thank you. Seconded by Paul Sweet. All in favor? Passed. Thank you. So I'm just going to back out of this for a minute here. Delegation. Yep. And we have no delegations. We thank Margaret for her work in congratulating Deputy Mayor Bichetti. But we have no delegations other than that. So I think that takes us, you'll have to excuse me here because I've just received this. So there we go. So we'll move on to our monthly reports, and I understand that our detachment commander is going to present the monthly report. Just as a quick reminder, as it'll be posted on the screen, and as you rotate through it, it's always good to give a heads up to our IT fellow what page you want to be on. So I believe we're looking at November. Okay, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sure, this moved over here. So I'll just go over most of the highlights here. I had an opportunity to sift through September, October, and November and compare them. So there will be some comments that I make with respects to November's report, referencing back in September and October, just for your awareness here. So if we could go to the next page after this. I know you've all had an opportunity to look at the report. You will see the top calls for service in Tecumseh are very similar to our other areas as well, with motor vehicle collisions and traffic complaints. Our ride and traffic enforcement are our top calls for service in Tecumseh, but certainly in most of our other areas. It goes to speak to the proactive efforts that our officers are doing in Tecumseh. I will draw your attention to the fact that the alarm calls and the bylaw calls continue to be on the top calls for service for Tecumseh. If I look back in September and October, those are also similar. So it is something that we can have some further conversations as we go through the upcoming months together to talk about. But property checks are certainly on there as the second highest call for service for the town of Tecumseh. And what that draws to my attention again is a proactive effort that our officers are doing to ensure the safety of all of our locations there. So if we can go down to the next page. In discussing the total calls for service for November, very similar to the other months that we have seen in September and October. We saw in November an increase of about 25 to 27% in calls for service, which is up compared to the rest of Essex County as a whole at 11% increase. The next slide there. If we look at our violent crimes for November, and I've asked Staff Sergeant Smith to take a little bit more of a closer look at this. I did see an increase of about 50% in October, but another increase significantly in November. Did you want to?
Thank you, Inspector. Yeah, just in regards to the violent crime for November, I did note we did have 8 assaults that have taken place during that month. 2 of our officers were involved where they were assaulted while responding to a call. So that's where those come from. It's a little bit on the higher end for assaults. I don't know what to attribute it to, but we were up there in a couple breach of probation charges in relation to that. So that's all I found on that. It did seem a little bit higher than previous months in relation to the assaults. So
Thank you.
I think I'd have that figured out by now. But maybe just a question on the amount that you had mentioned, assaulting police officer and so forth. So if there was 2 officers involved, so that would be like 2 assaults. And so it's the number seems very high, but it seems to be concentrated in one specific.
that's correct, Mr. Mayor. The call for service was at a local establishment, and both officers were assaulted while they're at that establishment
Okay.
together. They weren't 2 separate ones.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll continue on to the property crime, which is the next, just up one, actually, underneath the violent crime. Thank you. October had seen an increase of about 26%, and we see a little bit of a decrease here in the November month, which November year over year was similar across the rest of the county. I do see that our clearance rate is about 20% on those, and we see that month after, once some of the investigations are resolved, we'll see that clearance rate go up. But in the month of November, the 19.2% was our clearance there. If I could go to the next slide, the motor vehicle collisions, please. So in September and October, we saw a slight decrease in collisions. However, in November, we saw it increase, and certainly I've had a brief opportunity to look at December's, and it has gone up considerably again, just with the weather-related collisions that we see. We were fortunate to not have any fatal collisions in the month of November. I can go to the next slide, please. In speaking about impaired and exceed offenses, we see an increase with the start of festive rides. We see that most often every year, as well as with motor vehicle collisions rising. We also see that alcohol can play a factor in some of those. So you'll see, even though there was a 11% increase year over year from last November, overall, Tecumseh had 2 less than we had the previous year. And that will correlate down with our ADLS suspensions, which also include suspensions for our 3-day, 7-day warrants and our stunt driving. And you'll see that in the driver's license suspensions for November, it was just the 1. Thank you. In discussing the criminal code and youth charges for November, you'll see a considerable increase there from 11 last year to 34. Both of our criminal code charges, as well as our Provincial Offences Act charges, are up this month. There is a slight increase overall, but certainly in Tecumseh, we saw more charges laid than overall comparative to the other locations in Essex County. And just underneath of that, you'll see that there is just the 1 additional CDSA charge for the month of November compared to last year. In looking at our provincial offenses charges, overall throughout the county, it was 61.4% increase for the month of November. And Tecumseh certainly saw that increase from 31 to 55 as well there. And back in October, we had seen a decrease a little bit, but it had gone back up for this November here. So the traffic enforcement, which is underneath there, you'll see that the number of tickets and warnings are coded there. And on average, officers are conducting 16 traffic stops per day and issuing approximately 16 tickets per day, or sorry, 11 tickets in November, 16 in October. In looking at the mental health response, I was pleasantly surprised to see that September and October had decreased. November did start to go back up at a recent Board of Directors meeting at the Windsor Essex Child and Youth Advocacy Center. It was told to me that that is common, that it will decrease in September, October, November, and then we're going to start to see another incline in response to mental health calls right shortly after Christmas. So we can project to see that. However, it was nice to see that they had dropped for a few months here. In looking at the 911 missed dial and hangups, it's about the same as
To the end, that's fine. So there's a few questions coming up, and I think it probably will be more efficient if we wait to the end of the presentation and then, but we'll keep this slide presentation available just in case there's referrals to that. So sorry for the interruption.
no, thank you, Mr. Chair. 911 missed dials, you'll see that we had 5 in the month of November comparative to last year. We had 7, October we had 10 this year. In the next slide, you'll see a summary of false alarms as well as our ride checks. Our ride checks contribute to the efforts that Staff Sergeant Smith is conducting with his detachment here, as well as our festive ride, which you'll see those numbers continue into December. And our foot patrol, Tecumseh, has a highest visibility for our foot patrol out of all of my areas here. So I'm pleased to see that coming in at 126 hours of foot patrol, and October had 99. Bikes and ATV patrols, we are still working on setting up a bicycle course for the spring. We're trying to bring our bicycles back up to maintenance level to be able to have some trained officers participate in a course down here. That will be an additional tool that we use for resources in the summer. And our auxiliary hours are showing 33 for the month of November. They were about half of that in October. We did have opportunity to hire some additional auxiliary members, and they should be joining us after the next course. And on the back were the notable investigations, and I know that you've had an opportunity to read that for Tecumseh. If there's any other questions, I'd be happy to answer those, and pending those, that's my report.
Well, thank you very much. Good first report. And I know there are questions. Paul, I saw your hand come up, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to the inspector on the mental health calls. Is it, I guess this shows how many calls were done. Is there, I take it as a track, be curious to know how many are new calls versus repeat calls versus cleared, that people got the assistance that they required through that unit and then more or less dropped off. Do you know what I mean? I think it'd be kind of interesting to.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that information is not included in this report.
Great.
I have no doubt that our mental health response unit would be able to delve into that. It would take some time to be able to document and count through systematically to each call for service. But if it's something that you'd like to know, we can certainly see if we can dig into that further. I know that our mental health response unit does a lot of proactive work along with our MCERT and our YCERT programs. So they're doing that front loading of going out to visit members in our community to prevent another crisis call. So it is difficult to measure, I guess, whether or not that going out and having those proactive conversations is preventing a crisis call, but we can look at how many repeat calls for service we go to a house. I can look into that a little bit further if you'd like.
I just more or less on a yearly basis, just if you know where I'm coming from, just seeing like, are we, the good point of it is, when you're, I guess, applying for grants again in the next year is like, okay, we've had X amount of calls or percentage of calls, and we intervened, the unit intervened, and that we didn't get any more calls there, that was referred off, and other areas that are now taken.
And through you, Mr. Chair, I do know that when we look at those calls for service, I can tell you that the members of our community who are being apprehended by police and taken to hospital and being admitted to hospital, there's a correlation there. And what I mean by that is that our MCERT and our YCERT programs, when they visit with individuals in the home, they are able to assess them there to a level that those who need to go to hospital to be admitted are being taken there, and those who are in need of other resources and services in our community are being provided that at their home and not taken to hospital and have long wait times in the hospital. So we do measure that, which is a good indicator that we're taking the right people there when they need to go there.
All right, are there any, there's another question? Oh, there's two questions, actually, three. So Councillor Teneo, please start.
One of the biggest questions we have from our citizens is the traffic issues, and understanding that law enforcement and traffic enforcement is one piece of making a road safe. What is the best way for our citizens to report a traffic complaint to the OPP? If they have a constant, they call us, they say they're speeding this, they have their time frames. What's the best way for us to communicate to them to contact the OPP?
Thank you. I can answer that. I would say the best way is the 1-888 number, 310-1122, just because then that call is tracked. I'm okay with receiving messages from you from time to time, and I have, and we've addressed those issues, most recent one being Intersection Road. So, I mean, the best case scenario is them calling the 1-888 number, because then it's documented. But at the same time, a message from you as well is always good, because I can follow up with the officers and provide direction on expectations of dealing with this traffic complaint, so we can document it through traffic enforcement occurrences. And I know it's being addressed, because I'm not going through calls for service every day looking for the traffic enforcement stuff or the traffic complaints. A lot of times I receive them through the town in regards to that. And we work very closely with the town, as you know, with Public Works in regards to the speed spies and black cats, and providing that data to us when it's best to put our officers out to the right places at the right time. So I would suggest the 1-888 number to start, but a follow-up email to myself or Sergeant Whitelaw would always be good as well. So we can ensure the officers are out there dealing with the traffic complaints.
Thank you. I want to make sure so the citizens know, just to give them that number. Perfect. Some citizens fear calling the number, and bothering them, this, that. I said, no, it's okay to call the 888 number and make your concern, and the officers will address it. So, and yes, I agree with the data. Collecting the data is very important to me too, and making sure that we're putting the officers in the right spots for the right resources. So thank you.
All right, Mark, I think you had a question, please.
Actually, Mr. Chair, it's not a question, but it's to compliment our inspector and staff sergeant. I was so pleased as a board member to see that our patrolling hours were as high as they were. I believe truly that it's a compliment to the town of Tecumseh in showing that we have our officers out and visible to the community at large, whether it be businesses or the community itself, the residents. So I was very pleased to see the number at what it was. So just want to let them know.
Well, that's excellent. And your worship, I think you had a question. So
Yeah,
fire away,
go back
please.
to, thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to the inspector. I noticed in the report as well is that especially the North Shore on youth crime, there was quite a jump in the North Shore versus the South. And I know we've had a lot of issues with our parks, vandalism and so forth. Is this a reflection of those issues that we've had in Tecumseh in particular, Tecumseh and Lakeshore?
Thank you. Through the chair. I can answer that because when I was looking at some of our violent crimes and whatnot, and I noticed the criminal code and the YCJA charges were up. A large majority involving our youth were shoplifting is where those
Okay.
charges came from. So that's and a lot of times it's youth diversion. So they're diverted, the parents are notified. So that's where that's where we saw the increase. So.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Well, I have one. So we're looking at bike patrol training. Are we going to open that up to your auxiliary officers so they can patrol parks in the evenings to maybe stop some of the vandalism that's going on and also move people along who maybe are loitering or causing problem in our park system?
In response to that, Mr. Chair, I can assure you that our auxiliary members are invited if we have additional spaces available to them. Our auxiliary program is very different than a municipal auxiliary program. It is governed by a set of SOPs that do not allow auxiliaries to patrol on their own. So they would have to patrol with an officer. So it's good to have that mixture of officers and auxiliary officers in our courses like that.
Excellent. Any other questions? Then I think it's an order that we move that the OPP report for the month of September through November, concentrating on November, be received. I'm looking for Mayor McNamara, seconded by Mr. Gomes. All in favor? Thank you very much. Moving on to item K on our agenda, reports. There are no reports to present to the board. Item L, communications. There are no communications actions required for the board. We're moving right along. Item M, communications for information purposes. We have a Ministry of Solicitor General dated updating on the detachment board. I read it. It's Margaret, if you can maybe add some more light to it, because I think it was kind of a smokescreen myself, but that's only me.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So what I can do is update the board on correspondence as of today. So we did follow up that correspondence in October indicated that we would get a response back by end of November 2022. And that was in order for the Ministry of the Solicitor General to reach out to our First Nations partners to ensure that they were consulted on the two-board model that that we had put forward. Not that we hadn't tried to consult, but we're not successful in that regard. So what I can advise the board of as of right now, we have an email that confirms that the Essex County OPP Detachment Board proposal has been submitted to the Solicitor General for approval. So they've passed that hurdle. It's into the Solicitor General for approval, and then they will share more updates as they have that information. So another step towards the two-board model, and we'll advise the board once we have heard anything further from the Solicitor General. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. I'm wondering if, and I know several approaches have been made to the Caldwells. I wonder if any of the municipalities or any of the other boards have heard anything of their willingness to be part of the South Detachment Board or be observers to the board. They have that flexibility under the new act. There's many possibilities for them. Have we heard from them at all on anything?
Through the chair to the board, we have not. I take it from that email that we received today that the ministry has had some success in hearing back from the First Nations. They did not elaborate on what that was, just merely to say that our two-board proposal has been forwarded on to the Solicitor General for approval.
Well, thank you, Margaret. Second item for information purposes was a letter authored by Gary McNamara on behalf of the town and our Police Services Board to the Essex Detachment OPP on the untimely death of Provincial Constable Prashala. So I don't think there's any comment needs to be put on that. We on behalf of the board, Mayor McNamara, we thank you for doing that for everybody. So Nothing else. I would look for a motion that the correspondence stated detailed in items 1 and 2 be received. I'm looking for a mover. Mark is received and seconded by Paul Sweet. All in favor? Thank you. We'll move on. Under new business, the schedule of meetings, we have a motion that the Police Service Board approve the list of meetings that was sent. That the dates in there, January 16th, April the 3rd, June 26th, October the 2nd, November the 6th, and December the 4th. So we're looking for a mover on that Rick Tennell, seconded by Mark Gomes. And any discussion on that? I wouldn't suspect. All in favor? Thank you. We passed that. So finally, let's see, where are we? Scheduled meetings, homelessness in Tecumseh, updated by Staff Sergeant Jamie Smith. You have a report to us on homelessness in Tecumseh?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have a report per se in front of me, or I didn't prepare one. It's just basically an update. I'd received an email from Ellen in regards to somebody from St. Vincent de Paul that reached out asking the town in regards to homelessness. The individual happens to live in Tecumseh and is part of St. Vincent de Paul, and she is heavily involved with homelessness. So it was a great contact, and I reached out to her and spoke to her in regards to some people that were apparently out in Tecumseh area. So our officers had encountered some individuals out here over a period of time, and we're able to bring some of those individuals down to the Salvation Army or the mission and provide shelter for them. That's the best case scenario for us, and our officers will do that, and they will take them to a location so they have a roof over their head. At times, they don't want assistance. One of the things through conversation with this person was she provided some food, some drinks and different things, Cliff Bars, and also a sleeping bag for people to keep them warm and keep them dry. Again, we hope that we can get them to find a place. But in the meantime, for us, dealing with those individuals in the middle of the night, providing some of those things to them can help them, and they may build trust with us, where in the future, when we deal with them, they might accept the ride down to Windsor or whatnot. So it was a good relationship. So I appreciate from the town setting me up with St. Vincent de Paul. I don't think we've had that relationship before. And I didn't know that on Wednesdays and Sundays, they are active throughout Essex County. Going to places where they've received information that there may be a homeless person staying. So I appreciate the contact, and I'll continue to maintain that relationship. And she's included me in her monthly newsletter and whatnot. So anything we can do to help somebody in need, we will continue to do.
Well, that's excellent. There are also other groups in Tecumseh that provide services, Street Angels or so on, and they concentrate a lot of the work in downtown Windsor. We have people from this community actually who run a soup kitchen down, on their own in the evening. So there's a lot of activity, and I think those people would be delighted to be known to you, okay, because they're there to help. Question that arises, like the downtown little soup kitchen that's set up, because once the downtown mission closes, people have nowhere to go for a bite to eat. So this little portable soup kitchen is set up, staffed by Tecumseh people, by the way. They always keep the odd coat, extra socks, toques, things like that in their kitchen in case somebody really shows up in dire straits. And I'm wondering if St. Vincent de Paul is replete with that kind of thing, and if they're making it available, you can take somebody to get that, or I don't think they'd want to give it to you. I mean, you have no place to really store it, but I'm just wondering if they've opened themselves to say anytime there's an issue, you bring them here and we'll set them up.
Yeah, 100%, Mr. Chair. She did provide with me, like I say, probably about 10 to 15 packages that I've distributed through the different detachments. But she also did indicate that they do have gloves, socks, boots, jackets, toques, all that stuff. So it is available. I have her phone number, and it's available. And any resources that you may have, if you want to share with me afterwards, I'd love to take them.
I'm pretty certain. I can talk to a few people and maybe we can get you some contact lists. It may be a little write-up as to what they do and how they operate. Okay, your worship, I saw your hand come up.
Yeah, another group in Tecumseh, Staff Sergeants called Second Chance.
Yeah.
Actually, Michael Rovers just lives up the road here a little bit and we're quite familiar. I know through my charity golf tournament, we support them. And for a lot of the items, the toiletry items, but hats, toques, coats, sleeping bags, all kinds of items, not only for the homelessness, but the others too that are one step out the door, so to speak. And so Michael Rovers is the founding president of the organization and they have a linkage too with St. Anne's and St. Vincent de Paul as well. So that's another contact for us locally here.
Yeah, it's astounding how many people are out there giving of their time and their efforts very quietly and doing yeoman's work on behalf of the homeless. And before we go any further, I think Ellen probably is being good. She didn't give me a nudge in the ribs. I missed one of the items. We had our old business, but we had nothing under old business. So, but just to make sure item N is covered, I will say that we have no old business. Usually Ellen sits a little closer to me and she gives me one of these when we got a problem. Thank you. Item 3 under new business is our spring conference and annual general meeting, which is being held between May 30th and June the 1st in Niagara Falls. And I think we're going to talk with regard to board and staff attendance. And I noticed that our CAO is going to speak to this issue. So Margaret, please, if you would.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As the chair had mentioned, the OAPSB Spring Conference, the annual conference and general meeting is to be held May 30th to June 1st in Niagara Falls. And we're looking, I guess, to see what the interest level is in attending the annual spring conference. We do have well, actually pending tomorrow night's budget deliberations, we would have the usual amount of budget for professional development for the board, which is $10,600. However, Ellen's done the math and the with the mileage and the meal allowance, hotel parking estimate and registration, the total expense is just under $1,900 per person. So we're looking to see how many are wanting to attend because we may have a little bit of a budget constraint and may require at least some carpooling in order for everyone to attend and one staff member to attend. So, Mr. Chair, I guess if you're going to solicit the interest of the group, we'd like to do a head count of how many are planning to attend.
Well, I think we can do that right now. So I will start. I will be attending. My wife will be attending if there's a ladies program, and which we'll pay for on our own. You know that. Your worship. Our mayor wants to go. Paul Sweet wants to go, and his wife will attend probably, and Mark Gomes will go. So there you go.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
we're good with that.
Yes, I think, Mr. Chair, that we can accommodate 1, 2, 3, 4 members and one staff person and still be within the budget if it is so approved tomorrow evening.
Well, let's hope for the best. Plan for the worst, hope for the best.
Subject to budget approval.
As a
yes.
spin-off on that, our association under our new executive officer sent out a request for input for that meeting. They just basically wanted to know what we wanted to speak about. Now, I don't know if you all good, your worship. I answered it. I don't know if anyone else did. We did good. The big thing we have to discuss is to get our association to work with our municipalities to give us a blueprint for the creation of these detachment-based boards. It can be written in the legislation, but there's a lot of things that have to happen, a lot of coordination that has to happen. And I'm hoping we can maybe share best practices or whatever, or maybe our association is going to have some input as to how they see this happening. Another thing that I hope people ask them to talk about is there's a bit of an infighting. I'll just share between the Ministry of the Solicitor General and our association as to who's going to train people to be on the boards once we know all the content of the new act. The government of Ontario wants a larger amount of training for board members. As you know, the act calls no longer from top-down business plans. This first time in the history of the Ontario Provincial Police, they're going to have to be soliciting municipalities for input into the business plan. That's going to complicate your life, or probably not yours specifically, but certainly the hierarchy of the Ontario Provincial Police. But it's going to, it can be very daunting if no one has started to consider what they should talk about. You can throw anything into a business plan, but it has to have metrics. We have to be able to judge whether or not we're meeting our goals or whether our goals make sense to our stakeholders. So I hope we speak about that in our spring conference. And that's my little input on that. Any other comments? Well, seeing none, we would have a motion that the attendance by board members, administrative staff in the 2023 Ontario Association of Police Service Boards Spring Conference and Annual General Meeting held between May 30th and June 1st in Niagara Falls, Ontario, be approved in accordance with the Town of Tecumseh travel policy, professional development policy, and the 2023 budget. I'm looking for a mover. Rick Tenale, seconder. Paul Sweet, all in favor. Thank you very much. We'll pass that. Move on to item, you know what? There is one more item. That's a review of the regulations under the Community Safety and Policing Act. And this is an update from our CAO, and it'll be really well received, I'm sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the latest tranche of regulations that have been issued by the Ministry of Solicitor General under the new Community Safety and Policing Act are primarily to do with special constables, uniforms, code of conduct, complaints about special constables, matters respecting the appointment and functions of special constables, and then a couple on the collection and identifying information under the Act and disclosure of personal information, and then a regulation regarding the just trying to find the acronym, what it means, the VICLAS, the violent crimes, yes, information system. So in reviewing this full set of regulations, I was not of the opinion that these were matters that the board would be dealing with, because they are largely operational and pertain to specifics of special constables and how they'll be treated under the legislation. So I did not feel that it warranted bringing a report forward for the board's consideration. Thank you.
All right, thank you. You know, I read through some of the literature too, and I think a lot of it is for private policing, like Windsor, Toronto, places like that too. There's some of it. I didn't see a lot for contract policing like we have. So before we leave communications, I think your worship, did you indicate to me before the meeting that you had something you wanted to bring forward?
Yeah. I would like to propose a letter should be sent to the Attorney General of Canada. In particular, we've all lived through a very trying 2022 with the loss of 5 police officers across our the land. But in particular, the last one in particular, which I really, you know, this is an officer that went out to do his job, to offer help. And the individual, in my opinion, should have never been out of custody. And, you know, the revolving door of certainly of violent criminals that are left in society. And I would like a letter sent from this police service board to Attorney General and CC to the Prime Minister to really rethink, the whole issue. And I think the whole bail system needs to be rethought of, and in particular with violent criminals.
Proven violent criminals.
Proven, yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't care if they got to stay in jail 6 months or a year. You hear the whole arguments from the defense attorneys and so forth, but I really don't have, my heart doesn't bleed for them in that regards, but in particular when they've got a track record of reoffending, especially in violent crimes. And this constable in particular, he didn't even know it was coming. And that is absolutely, in my opinion, unconscionable. And we need to stiffen up the whole bail system.
Your worship, I would suggest too that we copy the commissioner. I think he spoke very plainly and he spoke very forcefully on his opinion of the insanity of that whole thing happening. So I think he would probably take heart in the fact that people are listening. I think
if I may,
please,
the only
please go ahead.
concern I have is this. I understand, but it shouldn't be driven by the police services. I think it should be driven by the general public, that we are, in particular, councils, municipal councils that contract policing, or even for any municipal policing and so forth. Like any other employee in our community, we feel that the health safety is critical and so forth. I just don't want. I don't think it's not a bad thing. I can send them a letter to CC that we're sending it there, but I'm not looking for. Maybe you can understand where I'm coming from. I think it should be driven by the general public.
So then maybe it should be just, your worship, it should be a motion in council, and it should come from council. And certainly our police service board can support a council.
No, I think it should be driven here. And then to council.
But
We can send a
but we don't
recommendation
speak-
to them.
But we don't speak for the general public, do we? The council does.
Yeah, we do.
Think so.
We do.
All right. Well, I'm not opposed. I think it's an excellent idea, and I think it would
But I would
fall on
CC
the
the,
administration to.
The Association of Police Services Board, though.
Oh, absolutely. I think it should be a groundswell. They should, each police service board should be looking at this on their own, to support. We're here to govern and support our policing. No, there's no better way of doing that than say our outrage at things that are not right, I see, please go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, just a comment. Unfortunately, we've seen this coming, as the mayor points out, for a long time with this revolving door, and we've talked about it. And now we've seen the, tragic results of this, and I agree with the mayor. It needs to be a groundswell from the community. And if it helps, we're part of that ignition, then that's what needs to be done, because, there needs to be not only bail reform, but the system is broken. It's proven itself. It's pretty sad. I don't ever like to point to our neighbors across the river about their legal system, but in the George Floyd case, when they can deal with a tragic incident, criminal activity like that, and have it successfully prosecuted and finished in a year, they're obviously doing something right that we're not doing here. When you're looking at 4 years for a murder trial to get to thing, which then drives down to these bail hearings, So I think it's enough's enough. That's I support it. I'll second the mayor's.
I agree with you. If you look back at that crime spree we had 2 summers ago, when it was basically, when in 2 income homes where mom and dad are out and they were being robbed during the day, it boiled down to a group of people that were being brought, remanded, released, remanded, released. And I think we even had one report where the same person was arrested twice in one day. So that there's something's not working in the system. So your worship, then I guess it's in order that we have a motion to create this letter.
So moved.
So moved. All right. And seconded by Paul. Is there any more discussion on that as to what should be included, or should we maybe draft it through the board and through admin and then review it? Yeah, okay. But I agree with you that hopefully by copying our association, other police boards will understand that their voice needs to be heard. Okay, all right. We're looking for, yes, please, Margaret, we have an emotion, we have.
Yeah, so just to add clarity, if the letter through you, Mr. Chair, if the letter comes from the board, certainly in copy to the OAPSB and to town council can also elevate it and have it circulated across the municipalities in Ontario as well.
So we have a motion and seconded, and we're looking for a vote. There's no other discussion. All in favor? Passed. Thank you very much. That was excellent. Okay. Item P is our next meeting. It is scheduled for April the 3rd. And by then we will also maybe have some things we can speak about. Is there something else? I must know. If there's something, we can also talk about what we need to be thinking about before we go to our spring conference. I think there's things that we need to talk about, get ready to move on. All right. So, and finally, no other business. Seeing no other business, I want a motion that be no further business to discuss. Our January 16 meeting of the Tecumseh Police Service Board be adjourned. All in favor? Thank you. Good. Done.